In this episode, we talk about this blob of green behind me, which is the green screen stage. How we decided on the sizing, the shape, the company that we work with in terms of paint, and what it actually took to build the whole thing. Automats to be connected to Ethernet. You do need partners. You have to be obsessed. The light reaches the wall. Looks like you're back for more. This is episode 3 of how we built our green screen virtual production studio. Before we start, make sure you subscribe to get notified with future episodes. We have 11 in total episodes on how we build this entire virtual production studio. And there's some really exciting episodes coming up, like, for example, tracking, motion tracking, gimbals, and also real-time keying. So make sure you subscribe. I was looking at how other people build their coves, be it regular white coves or green screen coves. And I realized that U-shaped coves are very popular. And I started thinking about the measurements. That's 3.5 meters from the back wall. That's where the end of the green screen cove was going to be. I think it gives you enough space for camera, lights. I decided that the whole place is going to be a cove and it's going to be green screen, and we're doing real-time compositing. So I think this will be a big enough stage. This allows us a lot more flexibility in what we can shoot and the amount of angles that we can use. Not only that, the height is almost 3 meters. It's a really good height to allow for looking up type of shots. There's quite a lot of green screen studios out there, a lot of them in rooms that are around 2 meters height or 2.5 meters height. And what happens is, even if you make the full height of the wall into a green screen, which most of the time you wouldn't, because you still need to put the grid, the lighting grid and attach stuff on the ceiling, you're limited to tilt angles that you can use when you're shooting. This studio is almost 3.5 meters high. Very tall studio. And that meant that I'm able to have a pretty tall stage, almost 3 meters, while still having 0.5 meter until the ceiling to assemble, to put lights, install anything, acoustic panels, which we're going to talk about in a future episode, and so on. When it comes to building a cyc, you primarily have 3 options: DIY and build the whole thing on your own, hire a cyc building service, right, as in like a company, a team of people, or third option, which we went with, find a team of builders that have experience with building stages. The reason why that option for us, I think I've seen a lot of examples and a lot of people talk about this, is not easy. You know, you can say you can build the straight walls, but the most challenging part is making those perfect rounded corners. And why do you need rounded corners in a green screen studio? You want to reduce as much as possible any shadows that your lights might create on the wall. Intenser shadows means more difficulty in keying the green, be it in post, if you're kind of like doing a green screen studio specifically to edit in post, or if you're like us and have virtual production servers, you use Blackmagic, the Ultimate 12, 4K, and so on. The more even your IRE in terms of the brightness, the exposure is, the better. And if you have a lot of corners and shapes in the background, that becomes very difficult to remove. Not impossible, but it becomes way harder to remove. I'm not a DIY type of person. I'm learning. Now I have a studio. I need to learn a bit more and be a bit more DIY, but not at the level of building an entire cyclorama. So that was out of the question. But that is the cheapest in terms of financial investment. Is probably the most expensive in terms of time commitment. And we reached out to a couple of companies that actually make kits, like they make the rounded corner kits for cycloramas, and they also do installations and build the walls and everything. And it was a bit too expensive, so we went with something in between, which came with downsides as well. We hired a team. They design everything for us. I mentioned that I wanted the corner radius, the rounded corners, to be 45 centimeters in diameter. That's usually the standard when it comes to green screen cyclorama. When you do wide cyclorama, you want something even deeper. So the team that we hired, again, had experience in building stages, worked on kind of like festival stages. I think they built some cycloramas as well. So I had to think how big I want this space specifically. I mentioned that it's 6.5 by 3.5. Hindsight, I think the cove is a bit short. And there's a whole episode just talking about the lighting. Pretty much as a summary of that entire episode, smaller your cove is, the more challenge you have to evenly light it. That being said, we couldn't make the cove any deeper because so it's 3.5 meters there, and then we have 4.5 meters operation area in terms of depth. If we would have cut more, then it would have been pretty impossible to have a comfortable surface where you have your cameras, your cranes, your teams, and so on. We had to make it the way it is in terms of size. I think it's pretty good. It comes with downsides and cons, as I mentioned, but it's pretty good. You can achieve a lot of things on stage. The builders team, they very professional. They made a plan. I told them the sizes. I gave them the specs. They made a plan for the cove. They sent me the sketches. We agreed on it. Now they also put together the joints, because one of the challenge was the ceiling. And we'll talk about this more when I talk about the lighting and the grid and everything. But they installed that as well. And the benefit of having this cove with sidewalls and the fact that it stands on its own and supports by the walls is that we can have a couple of those joints sitting on the actual stage. It's all made of plywood segments, and then the corners, the rounded corners, is flexible thinner plywood that can bend. So they created these shapes of that radius of 45 centimeters and then molded this flexible plywood on each segment, and then brought all of the components to install them here. The reality versus sketches is completely different, and there was quite a bit of struggle of fitting it in here because the measurements were taken correctly, right? Oh, that's the size, that's where we need to start, this is how deep we can go, this is how wide we can go. But this entire building, we're in it's an old building, nothing is straight here. You can't rely on any of the walls. You can't rely on absolutely anything to say, oh, this is straight. And what happened was when they brought the components here and started assembling wall by wall, it was quite a big challenge to fit everything in properly. This challenge with just shoving it in that space there has brought some challenges later. And these challenges there was pretty impossible for us to figure out at that time. But here's what happened. The U-shaped stage was pretty straight. Everything was measured perfectly. Because our studio, the walls aren't straight, when they started bending and basically shoving this whole stage into that corner, they had to force things. And the side walls, it wouldn't fit properly, like in a 90-degree angle. So they had to shove it a bit more so that this part fits in to that 3.5 meters mark. So what that produced was closing down the angle. So our walls are not 100% 90 degrees. The side effect of that, which we only saw after painting, and you actually can probably spot it now. We know that what the problem is now, so that's going to be fixed. But you can clearly see very well defined the corners. They're a lot brighter. And then the straight walls, you can see where the straight walls start. Because the stage is smaller and the lights are closer, and we'll talk about that in a different episode, the corners are brighter. And because the corners are smaller, it concentrates the light a lot more if there was a wider radius so that the light spreads more. The second problem is because now the walls aren't straight. When they designed it in the workshop and they built it, basically it was a fine circle radius, seamless radius from the straight wall to the rounded corner. Basically calculated that the angle is going to be 90 degrees. Now that that's a bit more it's not anymore a very fine corner. I'm telling you all of this because you have to be careful. If you're doing DIY and you're building your own cove, it's very important that your corners are 90 degrees and that you measure your radius based on a 90 degree. If you can't rely on that, like with us, potentially build it on site, construct it on site, and make that very smooth corner based on whatever angle your actual corner is. Because that's what we're going to do. We have the builders coming back and they're going to increase the radius of the corner, make a bigger radius to solve both of those problems, and make that smooth transition between the walls that aren't straight. Also help with kind of like diffusing that light that accumulates in those corners. Now in hindsight, I kind of regret not hiring specialists that have molds and have templates and they come and install everything and so on. I think it would have been way smoother. If you're hiring a team of builders, make sure that they're aware of the challenges that you might be facing. And now that you're seeing this video, you have an idea of what those are. In terms of paint, I've done some deep research on this to try to figure out what the best paint would be. Stumbled upon these guys, quite a new company in, I think they're in Turkey, called ChromaLight. And it seems like a lot of new green screen virtual production studios are starting to use them. They have a really good balance when it comes to green intensity and matte level. You have two options. Either you go with a very toned down pastel-like green, and that helps you diminish the spill on the talent because it's not like super bright neon-y bit to kind of like flood your talent on stage. So you go for a more pastel-y, toned down green. The challenge with that is it's harder to keep, whether in post or virtual production. Like for example, the Blackmagic real-time keying prefers a specific level of green and a brightness and exposure of 44 IRE. Other option is go something super bright, almost neon-y, and you're gonna get a really good key, but also a ton of spill on your talent. These people at ChromaLight actually had a very good in between, and I think they've done quite a lot of tests with the Blackmagic as well, because it's just like Blackmagic loves this combo of paint, and it comes in two applications. So you have the base layer that you put in. You put one coat of the base layer, and then you have to apply 2 coats of the top layer, which gives it that matte finish. When we bought for our size, 6.5 by 3.5 by 3 meters height, we got 4 buckets of the top layer and then 2 of the bottom layer, and it was more than enough. Really good paint, really good team as well. I actually met them at BSC this year. They sent instructions, they helped with everything. Right, so that's it for this week and this episode of how we built our virtual production studio. Don't miss out the next episode, which is coming out next week. The next one is very important, is all about the virtual production server, the green screen keying, all of that nerdy techie stuff that I know that some of you are here for. So I'll see you in the next episode.